Hello there. So this one is called Planet Earth, the Universe's Experiment. Just passing a beautiful ash tree that's just come into leaf. And the wild plant growing there is cleavers, which is edible. So I'm inspired to tell you about Chris Thomas, who wrote a load of books, and that's the title of his book. It's called Planet Earth, the Universe's Experiment. He has a very interesting take on everything. However, I'm not going to tell you anything about his book. I'm just going to tell you what is coming up for me. So we are, all of us, every life form on this planet, engaged in an experiment which has repercussions far and wide, way beyond the inhabitants of this planet. It's something we don't tend to think about, but it's useful to know, and it's explained rather a lot. And the essence of it is, how do life forms cope with full physical existence? Because that's what we've got. We've got physical bodies, and so have the plants and the animals and the insects and everything else. We've got physical bodies, full physical existence. Oh, and there's a beautiful little butterfly just flew down by my feet. So we are part of a living, breathing experiment, and it is to answer a load of questions. And from the perspective of being a human, it's to answer the question, what is it to be human? So this little bit does refer to his book. He says that's something to be aware of. We're constantly in the process of answering that question. And what's been happening in the last more than 100 years now is that we are experimenting with what is the effect of exposing full physical life forms to increasing electromagnetic radiation, which is not from a natural source, but from what human beings are creating. But I can tear holes in that straight away, because that is based upon an assumption that we're not part of nature, but we are actually. So in fact, all these methods of producing electricity, mains electricity, telephone, radio, TV, X-rays, microwaves, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, and eventually 6G. This is all part of this enormous experiment that's going on. And we're all part of it. So whether you use a smartphone or whether you don't, whether you live in the middle of nowhere, whether you live in a city, you're part of that experiment. And that actually is, whether you like it or not, that's just how things are. But it's really helpful to be aware of this and to realise we're all contributing to something rather extraordinary, which is to answer the question of how do we manage. And one of the keys is adaptation. It was one of our greatest strengths, us human beings. We are very adaptable, and it's good to know that we're able to live in the Arctic in igloos, and we're able to live in mud huts in the desert and tropical conditions, and we can live in brick and stone buildings with huge amounts of electromagnetic radiation in our homes. This is what's going on. This is what we're exploring. And the key is adaptation. And one of the things I've become increasingly aware of is that my excursions into nature, just getting outside, away from it all, and into these environments, is incredibly healing and very, very grounding. And as I have left behind the small town and immersed myself into nature, the first big tree that was fully in leaf that I passed underneath, I could instantly feel it protecting me from the harshness of the electromagnetic radiation that is being produced by humans. And I do want to be accurate, because actually everything's producing electromagnetic radiation. It's just that the radiation produced by these plants is incredibly healing, health promoting and beneficial. And I instantly feel the difference being out here. And then there's something I want to share with you. I've shared with you on the previous film, I've done a liver gallbladder cleanse. I'm now doing a Neurogenesis protocol, which I'm following just a couple of days after the liver gallbladder cleanse. I'm having a really large dose of the lion's mane mushroom, which is one of the premier fungi for catalysing neurogenesis, and for quite a number of weeks I've been giving myself small doses through tinctures of lion's mane and reishi. I've also been making teas out of chaga. These are all very powerful medicines, very powerful adaptogens, but I felt the need to go further, and it was when a good friend suggested to me to do a protocol with a large amount of lion's mane powder. So that's I've done this morning, and I added chlorella to it, which is a very powerful detoxing blue-green alga. I had this in a juice, apple, grape and pomegranate, and I can say that within a couple of minutes of taking this mix I could feel a difference. And if anything, what I'm aware of now that I'm actually outside in nature is my receptivity to nature is even greater than it normally is. I'm literally stunned by the beauty around me. The field, which is now full of buttercups, the vividness of the green of the grasses. And in fact, this might sound strange, but for me, in the state that I'm in, it actually feels like nourishment. I might not be eating any of these plants physically, but on an energetic level, I instantly feel very nourished indeed by them. And I've taken people out on this walk before. If you've seen my films in the last couple of months, you may have noticed one doing the same walk as this one, and just notice how different everything is now that we're in May. And I'm going to stop in a moment. I'm going to turn around to the left, and just to kind of give you a placement check. So there's Glastonbury Tor, and that's what I call the Ash Avenue, which runs along to the left there. I'll just bring it back. So I guess what I'm inviting you to do is to see all of what's going on without judgment, without getting emotionally overwrought, upset, drawn into any fear-mongering dramas, but to realise that that's what we are in. We are in this most extraordinary experiment of the universe, whereby we are having people doing all sorts of things, like creating these vast networks, and within a few years, theoretically, if it all goes according to their plans, there'll be over 100,000 satellites in the sky. And if that happens in a night, that will actually change what we see when we look up into the sky. Quite a sobering thought, isn't it? So no matter how we might feel about that, that is how things are headed at the moment. And of course, nothing is written in stone. Anything can change. No question about that. So really, the gift of being able to go into nature is so grounding and so balancing. And I've got it in my awareness that when I come across the first ash tree, I will be placing my hands on it and feeling that deep connection and literally earthing myself. And I'm feeling increasingly is that as the amount of human created electromagnetic radiation increases, best thing we can do is to increase the amount of time we spend in nature and the amount of time that we ground and the amount of time that we also spend in face-to-face experiences with people. These are very, very important things to do. We've had that experiment, in some countries it's still going on, the experiment of isolation and separation. So those who've been through that, and that's pretty much all of us, we know how that affects us. That's a lot of learning experience, so that's all part of the experiment. Having been alive in 2020 and 2021 and experiencing all that, and in some countries it's still going on. But if it's possible, human to human connection is very powerful, and so is a connection between a human and an animal. These are all experiences that can help to keep us in a good state. And if, like me, you did feel that your energy levels had deteriorated over a period of time, if, like me, you'd been exposed to a lot of severe trauma, then you might want to consider investigating different cleanses, and that can be a really helpful and beneficial thing to do. And it's important you do follow the protocols that people lay out, because they've obviously researched and developed particular ways to make them most effective. So I'm just going to pass under this electric power line. I'm a person that's always been sensitive to electricity. And my automatic feeling when I get underneath one of these is to keep going. And get away. Something else that's really helpful for us is water. Water experiences while swimming, cold showers, Epsom salts baths, getting into water in any way whatsoever, also really helpful for cleansing. And it's important if you do a load of cleansing, and one of the simplest things you can do is you can just move towards eating fruit for a while, and that's a very slower and gentler way to do the same job. But then do remember the advice that my sister gave me: cleanse and build. So after you've done some cleansing, whether through plant medicines or fruit diets or whatever, do be sure that when you finish your cleanse, give yourself a bit of time and then start to build up. And build up by eating the foods which you have discovered help you to build. Very important to have that balance. So that's the tree I had in mind. It's in the centre of the field of view now, and it's an ash. And the last time I was here, there were no leaves on it at all, there were just a few buds. And it reminds me of that country proverb: oak before ash, in for a splash; ash before oak, in for a soak. So this year the oak trees were in leaf before the ash trees, so that means this year we're not going to be having such heavy rain. But when the ash trees are in leaf before the oak trees, you can expect to have a wet spring. And it's true, we're having a relatively dry spring at the moment. Walking barefoot is a wonderful activity. when and if the ground is free of anything that's going to damage your feet. So here it is, yes, that's it. The ash buds are just coming into leaf now. So I'm going to take my leave of you and connect deeply with this beautiful ash tree. And let's just leave you with the last view of the tour. Here we go. All the love to you,